Your brain is actually having a really interesting reaction when you're trying to change to the new assumptions. And there is a great way to push back against the doubt that is coming up. Hello guys, welcome back. Welcome to this new video. A slightly different, interesting angle on doubt, the manifestation process. I know this is the type of thing that's usually requested and that people usually struggle with. So hello to any new viewers, and I hope this is going to answer and kind of satisfy that itch that a lot of people had for maybe more content about how to deal with this part of the process where you've been persisting, but maybe now you've reached a point of doubt, or you have this very much kind of an ebb and flow experience of things being up and down. And one moment you believe it, you trust it, but then what do you do when doubt hits? So that is what I'm going to talk about in today's video. So definitely stay tuned. I've got two sections today. Normally I do three, but I broke it down into just two main sections of what to do, what's actually going on. So definitely keep watching. Your brain functions very much on familiarity. So whatever you kind of teach your mind, obviously, whatever's repeated, normalized, seen as almost like an everyday experience, something that gets built up into a belief, into an assumption, that familiarity of knowing I've experienced this before, this has been said before, this is not new information, this is repeated information, a repeated experience. When it can pull from, I guess, a memory, your brain really functions on that familiarity. So likewise, when you're trying to go from a negative circumstance to a positive circumstance, the familiarity is, of course, that old version, the negative version, because that's, even if it's just two conversations or two events, two instances, maybe even just repeated thoughts in your mind, it doesn't have to necessarily be tied to a real event. Sometimes, for example, we can really spiral by falling down a rabbit hole of overanalyzing, asking a million what if. I myself, and this is a normal human experience, can relate to, having these anxious scenarios or frustrating, angry scenarios play out in your mind, where you just imagine, oh my gosh, what if this person actually does this? Or, whatever you think might be realistic or a normal everyday experience, sometimes that does come to mind, and then you end up feeling annoyed or sad. And it's kind of like, yeah, that social media joke that people make of, having an argument with someone in your head and then you actually get annoyed. It very much functions on familiarity. So if you've repeated anything, that I just gave an example of, even just the thoughts, doesn't have to have been an actual circumstance that's played out in your life, that can very much feed into what your brain assumes, expects, and therefore always goes back to or brings up as logical reasoning. So something interesting about your brain function, which is very much what I wanted to tie into today's video, is the amygdala, if I'm saying that correctly, because in Polish migdały, I believe, is almonds, and it's like this almond shaped part of your brain. So that's how I remember it. It is essentially neurons in the brain, to really simplify it. And no, I'm not an expert, but that is my understanding and research on this part of the brain function. It views your new reality as a threat, essentially, and then brings up those doubts to keep you safe, to keep you in the status quo and what is known, the familiarity, what's safe. Even if safe just means repeated, it's not something brand new. So it doesn't, your brain, the subconscious, it just doesn't like those new experiences. So your conscious thoughts that come to the surface are going to be oftentimes tied to logic, doubt, questioning things, questioning your manifestation, because chances are you're going from, you're doing a 180, you're going from A to Z. You're not going from, the same type of experience, just slightly different kind of features or slightly different events. You're going from something negative to something positive. So your brain views it as a threat because it's something new, something different. It's not familiarity, and the doubts will come up to try and keep you safe. So just see the doubt, honestly, as something temporary and essentially a warning sign. It's not something that is preventing you from manifesting. It's not something, the be all end all that's telling you, oh, you had this doubtful thought, or you had something that logically makes sense come up in your thoughts. Well, then you have to investigate, you have to analyze, you have to take it on as a very realistic possibility. That's not the case with manifesting at all. I don't care if 100 times your person or your boss said something negative to you. That's not to say it has to be 101. 101 times after, well, the 101st time could be something positive and the complete opposite and just kind of take you aback in the moment. Who's to say it has to constantly keep repeating itself? That's the logical thought. So don't hold on to it as something that is holding you back, preventing you from manifesting. There is no such thing. There's no objective rule or circumstance that you have to follow or accept and say, well, I just can't manifest this, or I just have to wait 3 months for this. That's not how manifestation works. And when you change your assumptions and you work on that with repetition, what's also going on, I believe this is different to the amygdala, but your old neurons are really fighting just to stay alive, to stay in that place. So the old neurons are kind of firing up and saying, well, this is the learned experience. This is the familiarity. This is just the status quo and how things have always been. So that is very much what is feeding into the doubt that comes up. So don't take it as this objective reality and, oh, because I had this thought, it means my brain understands that my objective reality is telling me this. It's built on familiarity. That's why, for example, if someone maybe struggles with self-concept and confidence, then accepting a compliment is going to be difficult. You know, this is often the case for women, for young women, or yeah, just anyone maybe struggling with self-esteem, even if it's just a temporary moment, maybe you're having a bad day. If someone compliments you, a lot of the time, the kind of instinctive reaction is to play it down or say, oh my gosh, I had to work so hard on my hair. You know, if someone says it looks good, or they say, oh, you look so good in that outfit. You say, oh, really? Oh my gosh, I ate so much at lunch. I thought I'd be bloated. Like playing it down, not accepting it. That to me is an example of what that learned reaction would be like, with those old neurons coming in of what is learned, what is familiar. As that old way of thinking is filtering out, it's absolutely possible for doubt to arise. In fact, you're going to experience it most likely at some point. It really is just a way of that old system, that old way of thinking releasing itself. So don't, again, take it as something objective or I think I'm going to talk about this a little later in the video, but don't catastrophize it. Basically, it's the old way of thinking, the old system being filtered out before the new program reaches 100% completion. You know, to analogize, imagine you're updating your software, your laptop, your phone. You're not going to keep shutting down and refreshing every 10 seconds just because it's not done yet. And you say, oh, it's still showing me the old program on screen. Why isn't it done yet? And then you keep restarting it. You're not going to do that. You're going to wait for it to complete, knowing, okay, I'm still going to see that old programming, but the new one's being developed, being uploaded. So it really is a case of fighting your natural emotion versus just accepting and recognizing in the moment, okay, I had a negative thought, I thought from the old story, I reacted, I spiraled, you know, however you want to label it and whatever situation it is, you know, just accepting and recognizing, okay, I had that doubt essentially. So whatever type of doubt, it all falls under the same category, under the same umbrella. But when that doubt comes up, you accept it. You don't panic. You don't just jump to worst case scenario. So instead of trying to fight every emotion, fight the doubt, fight the maybe sense and feeling of insecurity in that moment, a sense of disappointment, or, you know, the emotions that can come up with doubt. I guess feeling doubt is an emotion in itself, but usually it ties in with these other feelings that have been triggered. So when that comes up, you don't fight it or push it or, you know, take it as anything crazy. Just say, okay, in this moment, that's the reaction I had. That's how I'm feeling. I'm recognizing it. That's a good mental diet. That is great self-awareness, because without that, you can't apply a good mental diet, and you flip it back around. So don't catastrophize and cause yourself even more panic. Don't catastrophize that you've had a doubtful thought and say, well, it makes logical sense, therefore, you know, now I can react badly. Now I can play the victim and get upset and cry and feel that my manifestation's ruined. Really take this into consideration and try and make it a rule for yourself that you're not going to catastrophize it or let it ruin your entire day. Try and pick yourself back up, because your nervous system is also going to respond. That is something I touch on in a lot of my videos and in past videos, how everything is interconnected, your brain, your emotions. I believe Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it brain and heart coherence. And yeah, essentially your nervous system, your neural pathways, they are all interconnected. Your body's communicating with your brain all the time. I believe that is how our emotions are created, you know, in a response to a thought, to something we're visually seeing, whether it's a threat or something safe. You don't want to cause yourself more panic, because as I said, that does affect your nervous system. If you're going to let yourself get into an even worse mood or feel really upset and down and despondent because of doubt or, you know, the reaction that you've had, it's just going to affect your emotions even more, basically. Doubt is going to keep you in two minds, kind of split in two, so to speak. With questioning your manifestation versus actually pushing back. So questioning what's going on and letting that doubt have an effect, have an impact, and say, oh my gosh, okay, well then maybe this, what if that's the case? Oh, I was right about that thought. I always knew this was going to happen. Feeding into that, feeding into the old story, into the worry and fear that may come up, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, those things that are very natural and human, but that you don't want to feed into and spiral down and say, oh, I always knew it. Oh, of course it, it's failed. Now I can be safe knowing that, I'm just going to accept total defeat and, not even bother trying and taking this risk with my manifestation. And on the other side is pushing back against that doubt and saying, no, I'm not just going to sit and accept it or let it dictate my mood, dictate my thoughts and tell me, oh, this doubt came up. It seems logical. It kind of seems believable based on past patterns, based on my own past thought patterns and the way I would have reacted. But I'm going to push back. I'm going to apply my mental diet. So my best advice for that moment, I guess it's like a bit of a 3 key point routine of just let it happen. Don't, like I said, don't try and fight it. Let it happen. Don't panic and apply your mental diet. So just let the doubt come up, let the emotions come up, be self-aware, recognize what you're feeling, what triggered it, what was it that you saw or heard that brought up that doubt and those feelings, and recognize it, and don't apply significance to it. Just say, okay, like the way you would recognize what I'm looking at right now, clouds in the sky, literally the same thing. You would not say, oh my gosh, a white cloud in the sky. What does that mean? Oh my gosh, I have to go do research. I have to go on social media. It might seem a bit silly, but the same way, if your person, if your boss, your friend, whoever might be connected to your manifestation coming in together, that maybe you're waiting for a certain type of communication to come in to confirm your manifestation, you don't immediately jump and say, I now have a million questions and I'm going to spiral down this rabbit hole because doubt came up, something got shown in my reality, something was shown to me, and, I just experienced something not great. So now I need to analyze and unravel everything because the doubt has created an emotional response. When your emotions get involved, it can feel a lot more real, right? It can get uncomfortable. So that's where you want to just let it happen, not panic or catastrophize. As I said in this video, understanding, we just unpacked, why it happens, this kind of brain science behind it, and all these things that are pretty natural and relatable for most of us manifesting. So there's no need to panic. It's not permanent. You just come in with your mental diet. You don't need to unravel and answer a million questions about that doubt. Your dominant mental state is what will be reflected. And remember that this can and will change with persistence. So if your dominant state has been negative, if you've been spiraling, wavering, and, it's not been great, maybe you're at the beginning of a manifestation because something went wrong, that's totally fine. Just remember, your dominant state, your dominant story might still be negative, might still be tied to the old circumstances, but it can and will change with persistence, with being consistent with your manifestation routine. Whatever that looks like to everyone will be slightly different, but it can and will change. So just remember, what's being shown to you, what you're likely to react from, is that old state. So every time you start to question your manifestation and react because of the doubt that has come up, questioning, oh, this wasn't a positive thing that I just experienced or saw. So now let me, question, is my manifestation actually coming in? Am I actually manifesting this outcome that I thought I was? Reaffirm your end result, reaffirm the new story. Take yourself back into, no, this is my reality, this is what's happening, and describe it. Say your affirmation, say a brief statement, turn it into the opposite. When you don't let yourself stay split between these two options, between these two different realities, the old versus the new, your mind will have to stick with and reflect and conform to the new version, the one that you've chosen and said, this is where my focus is going, this is what I've decided I want, and therefore I'm telling myself, I'm convincing myself that I'm living it right now. When you choose that and focus on that, your mind will have no choice but to conform to that. So really minimize the significance of the negative circumstance, of the doubt, of the situation that caused your doubt, and remind yourself, this is just the old story. Again, like I said, the main thing is don't catastrophize. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel your emotions. Don't suppress your emotions. But I'm saying don't just fall down this rabbit hole and get yourself worked up into a state. I know we all have those days and moments sometimes, but try and minimize that significance. I kind of like to think of it, it might sound a little toxic, but gaslight the anxious part of your mind, where it is a mental diet. You are basically pushing back and saying, no, that's actually not true. What are you talking about? That never happened. Or, let's say it's a bad text message, a bad conversation, or there was some like social event that didn't really go to plan. And you say, no, it was perfect. I don't know what you experienced, but I experienced, and then describe it. Basically gaslighting that doubtful part of your mind. I would really say go in with that robotic affirmations, maybe just 5 minutes. That really is an ideal time frame. It's pretty quick. A minute, 2 minutes, if you really don't have time. I'm not saying everyone has to constantly be able to factor in, a 5 minute break of just doing affirming. If you can, if you're at home, that's great. But yeah, that's like a general ideal amount. If you need to do a mental diet, you need to bring yourself back into a good mood, get out of that doubtful way of thinking. Even just looping your own affirmations 5 minutes at a time can be very powerful. So bring yourself mentally back to the end result you're creating. What is it that you want? What is it that you want to be living right now? Well, tell yourself that is what you're living right now. It's going to help reset your nervous system, which, as we know, helps your emotions, helps change out those old neurons and just the way your brain thinks, because you're teaching yourself new reactions, new thought patterns, not feeding into and spiraling from one moment. Reset your nervous system, bring yourself back to focus on the end result. So really understand that you're shifting your way of thinking. You're jumping into the new story, essentially. You're mentally living from the end. It's a new way of thinking. So that's usually why the doubt is even coming up. So you can even reframe it in a way where you say, well, it's good. If I'm experiencing this and I'm experiencing something new, it means things are actually changing. I'm actually picking up on and recognizing this change within myself. And your reality is always going to bend to the version of your reality that you focus on, that you convince yourself of, that you repeat. The familiarity is what creates your natural way of thinking. You need to familiarize your subconscious mind with the new reality, and then your 3D reality will bend to reflect that. So remember that going forward if doubt does come up.